you to survive this crazy time and how it may be impacting your ability to make money, particularly if you're performing in clubs. So don't be a deer in a headlight. Part of shifting your sales is proactively putting together a plan for you on how you're going to get through this and what are the opportunities that are available for you. The government, it is raining money right now. And there are 3 clouds that you can be under where the money is coming down, and you need to choose 1, 2, or 3. But if you are proactive here and you meet some bare requirements and you take this through all the steps, you'll be able to see revenue coming in. And that's what I want to help you with today, and also look at things like budgeting and things that you need to do as part of creating that plan. So what we're going to talk about is SBA guaranteed requirements, who qualifies, and as I said, if you're a corporation and you've been in business for more than a year, or you're an independent contractor, sole proprietor, or self-employed, you do qualify. So we're going to talk about payback periods and interest and timelines for the various programs. And if for some reason you have an entity with partners, anybody that's a 20% stakeholder in a partnership will need to be a guarantor or sign on the loans. That being said, as I go through the various loan options, there are a couple that do not require for you to personally guarantee, but the EIDL program will, and I'll talk about that as we go through this. So what you want to look at is what's right for you. You can pick 2 of 3 choices, and the most important thing is to do your homework here. The 7A Express loan is available through banks, and the banks are doing the processing of that. And those loans you can get without a personal guarantee, and you can receive money and pay back over a 10-year period at very low interest rates. So you go to the bank approves it, and then SBA will go for it, and the funding will take place within a reasonable period of time, given the chaos of what's going on. And by the way, Jeff or Marshall, if you want to jump in here on anything I'm sharing, please do.
Is there a maximum to the 7A loan amount?
Yes, there is. And I believe it's $2 million. It's called an express loan. And at one point, it was only $350. But for the purposes, $350,000. But for the purposes of this extraordinary time, they've extended it. So it's pretty healthy.
That's fine. I didn't know if it was going to be like 25,000 or 10,000. I mean, if any comedian is watching this and they can get up to $2 million, they're probably having somebody else watch it for them. So that's good to know. So this express loan, they can get what they need. And is it forgivable? Is any of that forgivable?
The express loan you need to pay back.
Okay.
However, you're getting very low interest rates, and you're getting that loan over a 7 to 10 year payback.
Gotcha. Okay.
But you do have to pay it back.
So for example, if you had a bunch of credit card debt at a high interest rate and you could get this loan for super low interest rate, that might be a thing you would want to do.
Absolutely. And Jeff will talk about that later, and when we talk about credit card strategies for right now. But this is the thing, if you get the money, You have to be able to tell them why you need the money and make the case for it. And it's more important to make the case of how the virus impacted your business, which I'm going to get to, than anything else and that's your ask. And that's part of doing your homework. The PPP program is to keep people working. It's the Paycheck Protection Program. And you're probably not in this league, but I just got a call from someone last night that they received $3 million in this program. Again, like everything else here, do your homework. So if you had anybody on your payroll from February a year ago, they're going to look at an average of what that payroll was, and they're going to multiply that by 2.5. And that's the amount of money that you can get through PPP. PPP is another program that you need to go to a preferred lender, and they are running out of money on that program right now. But that doesn't mean your ship has sailed. That means you're waiting for the next ferry, because right now in Congress, they're looking to put more money into the program. But it's a question of doing your homework and doing the math and the formula. And you can see 50 sites online right now that takes you through the nuts and bolts of this.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but PPP would not be good for 1099s or sole proprietors. Is that correct?
Well, the way you could do it is if you were paying yourself, or you took out specific draws and it's just you. But let's talk about that, Marshall. You may have other people on your payroll, even if you are a comedian, a setup person, somebody that books your tours. Anyone that you are paying could be considered on your payroll. So this is where I want you guys to think outside of the box and really do the nitty-gritty on this to decide if there's anybody that would fall into that category that would be added into that multiple of 2.5.
Well, they would have to have it on 940 files. Like they'd have to have it as a payroll receipt showing that they're on payroll as of February 15th. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, and I think you can get away with them being independent contractors that may be dispensable for you. For example, when you go on tour.
Okay, so a lot of these comedians are not going to be on that level, but if there are a sole proprietor, you meaning like, hey, I'm John Smith, I brought in $50,000 in performance money, I spent $20,000 on marketing and blah, I netted 30, I've been paying taxes on that 30. Is somebody like that able to do the PPP? And by the way, the reason why I'm focusing on this PPP, everybody, is because that money is forgivable. It's free money. And so if you can get part of that free money, then that's obviously a first choice, if possible, logically a first choice. So let me ask you again, Rich. So if you're that person that brings in 50, you spend 30, you're paying spend 20 and you're paying taxes on 30, is that person able to get PPP?
Yes, but
Okay.
Let's take a look at that. Let's make it easy. 12, 24, let's say it's $3,000 a month. You're not going to get a lot here. But let's say when you do an average on the income that you're reporting, and it's $3,000 a month, then you're looking at about $10,000 you can get from it.
Right. So it's whatever that is. So if you can show that you make $3,000 a month, you're going to get a multiplier of 2.5, which is going to be $7,500, and you just have to show that you are still paying yourself as of like June, whatever that is, and then it's forgivable, right?
Yes.
Gotcha. And so that's what a lot of people would probably do well getting, is applying for the PPP through your bank. If you got to file the paperwork, I've done it recently, and Jeff, I know you've done it recently.
I've helped a bunch of people do it. And the thing about the PPP is the forms are not long. They're short to get started. And so if you have a question, just apply. There's no downside to doing the homework and applying.
So I'm going to make a suggestion there. Divvy has completely shifted their focus. So they've gone with they've adjusted their sales, and they are divvy.com. They have set up such an easy turnkey program. It is dummy proof. And you don't have to wait in line as you might in a bank, and they are processing this.
And it's DIVVY?
Yes, Divvy. Another is Cabbage, and Cabbage is high rent money lenders, very high interest rates. They completely shut down that side of the operation. It's by KABB, Cabbage, AGE. So that might be the quickest path to do that. They really make it easy for you to do it.
So Cabbage and Divvy would be the two that you'd recommend people to go to.
Unless you have a good banking relationship and you're not 5,622 in the queue.
Well, right. I mean, I think the only reason most comedians deal with any bankers is to see if they can get their NSF charges reversed. So that's great. So that's great information right there, everybody. Divvy and Cabbage is where I'd recommend going, or what we're recommend going to, and filling out the paperwork. And so what are they going to need as far as paperwork on their end? Do they just need 2019 taxes, 2018 taxes?
If you go on the site, it'll show you're going to need a driver's license. You may need to verify.
Well, there goes half of them.
That you're an American citizen or have a green card. And I'm going to show you some of the key things you're going to need for each of these programs. You're also going to need to document that you really were getting paid.
So here's a big question a lot of them have, and I've had people ask me this, is let's say that I'm a W-2 employee plus I'm getting 1099. And now the W-2 is still paying me, but I've lost this 1099, but that was 30% of my income. Is that a PPP application or EIDL?
I would go for it. By the way, yes, it is an EIDL, and yes, it is an express loan.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
Yes, it is an EIDL program, and
Okay.
yes, it is an Express 7A loan.
That 1099 makes you a sole proprietor if you don't have any other company. And so you would apply as a sole proprietor, and that's provided for.
Yes, that's exactly right. So the important thing here is, again, don't be a deer in the home, and don't be a deer in the headlights. See this as getting yourself ready for your next tour or your next CD, and double down on it. And bring in somebody that can help you do this, who will do the paperwork, who will do the detail stuff that may not be something that you would normally want to do or do well.
Well, they don't have to. They could try it themselves, and if you can't do it, then maybe find somebody that can make it happen. Because, I mean, if you're able to bring in that kind of money and had to pay somebody $100 to do it or whatever it is, it's going to be that's a big return on investment if you get approved. So
Most people just need clarification of a couple of questions.
And I think they also need a little courage.
yeah. Well, Jeff had mentioned that, Jeff Thompson on the call, that if anybody, he's going to share his information with you. If anybody gets stuck, you can reach out to him and he can help you figure out some questions. I've helped comedians as well. People call him and say, hey, what's cost of goods sold and some other stuff. Don't hesitate to reach out to me, and Jeff's going to share his stuff, and we'll help you guys get through a lot of that, because it's going to be pretty simple for most of you to do this.
So with all of these programs, we're setting up some templates for you. If you're going for the 7A or you're going for the EIDL program, we're setting up some templates which will create your business plan for dummies, in essence. And we will have that up and running within the next 10 days. So if you guys contact me at rich@coach2thebest, we'll be able to get you on our links and stuff and show you how to do this. This is our primary focus right now. I'm primarily a business coach, but I've made this shift because I want to help people get through the whole thing, beginning with what happened before, how you were hit, what you're doing to deal with it, and what it's going to look like when you come out on the other side.
Yeah, I love that. And then, so yeah, just want to clarify. So if you are that sole proprietor 1099 person, that's the express loan or the EIDL, is that correct?
Okay, now here's the thing. PPP is just about recovery of getting revenue to pay personnel. So
Okay.
that's all PPP, and to pay rent and a few other things like that. Interest, health insurance, things like that. So it's not just the salary. If you have benefits, you can include that. That's what I'm saying. All you have to do is go online and you'll see the requirements for it. And Divvy is a great place to see the requirements, whether you're going to use them or not.
Gotcha. And so you're saying it could be any of the three. I just didn't know if there's one that you say that is better for 1099 versus not.
It can be two of the three.
Any of those three would work, but they can apply for two of them.
Yes.
Okay. That's the clarification. So as these 1099 people, they can apply for all, they're qualified for all three typically, but they can only pick two to go with.
Okay, so let me make it clear what those two are. One of them is PPP. And then you pick between the express loan or the EIDL program if you want to go for it.
Gotcha. Okay.
And the EIDL has a grant that is, you don't have to pay back, that you potentially get. And that's what a lot of people are doing, PPP EIDL, unless you need a bigger amount. So it just depends.
Well, you're going to get a ton of money on the EIDL program if you qualify. But to Jeff's point, once you get in the queue, see, one loan is done by banks. That's the express loan, the 7A. The other loan is done directly with SBA. And SBA never anticipated that all over the country at one time, they'd have to administer a program like this. Generally, there's a disaster in New Orleans, in New York, on the Gulf Coast, but this is everywhere. And they haven't really gotten their rhythm together yet. So it's a long queue, but it's worth waiting to get into the line. And what Jeff is talking about, once they get to the process stage where they give you a number in EIDL, there's a box that you check off that says, I'll be happy to take your $10,000. And you can get that in less than a week.
Yeah, so you fill, there's a checkbox and you're doing the EIDL application. I want the $10,000 emergency money. You got to put in your banking information and submit it. And they're supposed to do it within 3 days. I did it last week. I haven't gotten anything. Jeff, you did it before me. Jeff, have you gotten your 10,000 yet?
No, they're saying it's imminent though. They said it'll be in the next 5 or 7 days.
Yeah, so it's guaranteed. And if you get that number, it's free $10,000.
So let's just say that's all you got. And let's just say you got 7,500 on the express loan. That's 17,500 in your pocket.
Yeah, that's an annual salary for a lot of these guys. So that's, you know, we do it for the love, right, people? So anyways, yeah, so keep going. This is great. I'm glad to get that clarified because I had those questions in my own head from talking with people. So thank you so much for helping clarify that.
So during 9/11, after 9/11, this disaster relief program kicked in for anyone in the country that was impacted by 9/11. And I helped several clients.
You mean COVID-19?
Yeah, if that's what I mean. I helped many clients get disaster relief loans that are 30-year loans at a low interest rate right now of about 4%. And I'm going to share with you how this could be your biggest payoff when we get to that. But the difference is with the EIDL loan, you're going to have to guarantee it. With the Express loan, you don't have to guarantee it. With the PPP loan, if you use the money to pay yourself or anybody else that you're saying is part of your team, you have to be able to prove that you paid them back or that you paid salaries. And that's what the PPP program is really all about. Employers able to pay themselves and other people, and it just extends for an 8-week period, but it's a Band-Aid.
Yeah, that is good.
So just to be clear, the EIDL, the grant you get through that process, you do not have to pay that back. If you proceed to take the full loan, you would have to pay that back. So you can just do the EIDL program to get the grant, and then you can decline to go forward with the loan later.
So Jeff, I'm not sure which one of us is right, but it's my understanding that you get the grant. Excuse me. Let's say you get $100,000 and they've already given you 10. That 10 is still a grant.
That's correct.
90,000 is what you're going to have to pay a note on.
Right. I'm saying you can decline the rest of the process for the big amount of money if you wish to. After getting the grant, you still get to keep the grant.
Yep. And I'm going to show you how you can put yourself in a position to say, this is what I'm applying for because this is what this crisis has cost me. And that slide is coming up.
Here we go. Got a slide coming.
Okay, so this is borrowing strategies, and I'd love for Jeff to jump in on this. Obviously, you're not going to do factoring, but there are opportunities for bank financing still. You know that there's a whole array of SBA loans. Also, we just received information that there are loans available, grants through Amazon for up to $100,000. And we will be posting that information online within the next week or so. So there's a lot of money out there above and beyond the SBA path. Jeff, what I'm going to say about personal credit cards is that if you can take your credit card debt on cards and your credit is good enough so that you can move it to a card without interest for up to 6 months to a year, do it, do it, do it. And the other thing I want to suggest here is you must pay the minimums on your credit cards. Don't think you can get by without doing that, because that is the quickest way for your credit rating to go down the tubes. Jeff, what do you want to add to that?
So creditors treat people that pay something wildly differently than people that pay nothing. I used to do work for these guys, and the report spits out who paid nothing. So if you paid $10, $20, hopefully the minimum, you're way ahead because the creditor doesn't view it as a screw you. If you can pay the minimum, great. If not, you got to call early in the morning, make a deal, but just don't not pay anything. That's the key, because if you tell them what's up and what's going on, a lot of times you won't even get a deal on your credit. And pay something if you can, because that means people aren't saying, okay, well, this guy said screw you and we're not getting any more money. But it's best to contact. You're going to be on hold a long time. Call early in the morning, send them a fax, mail them a letter, but contact them somehow.
Well, I'm going to say, in the interest of comedians, you can also call at 1 or 2 at night when you guys are awake.
That's right.
Are they 24/7 answering those calls?
A lot of them.
Okay, yeah, that is good.
Yeah, so if you can find them, that's wonderful. Now, if you're loaning money, if you're borrowing money from friends, family, and fools, I would recommend that you put something in writing, letting them know what you're borrowing, what interest they want, if any, clearly when you're going to be able to pay it back. So if you want to go to a Thanksgiving dinner 2 years from now, you won't be banned from the dinner. Just put it in writing and have both parties sign on it. My experience has been with verbal agreements that we all remember them in our own best interest. And I'm sure you all know the joke, if you don't have it in writing, it's not worth the paper it's written on.
That applies to your deal with your credit card company as well. You want to ask them for no penalties if you can, and whatever deal you make with them, ask them if they can email it to you, or at a minimum, email it to them or write it to them and say, this is what we agreed.
And CC yourself on it so you have that copy.
Right.
Yep. And the other thing about vendor financing, I know if you're a musician and you just did an album, you probably owe a lot of people a lot of money. And so you want to be able to go back to your vendors and say, here's our situation. This is what I can do. This is what I can't do. This is when I'll be able to pay you back. Nothing is worse than for a vendor not to hear from you, because then they will think the worst. And if you owe 10 people $1,000 and all you have is $1,000, pay each one of them 100 and just keep it in the loop. I see Jeff nodding. Any words of wisdom you want to add to that?
Yeah, the person on the other end of the line is a real person, and they can do a lot to help you if you're kind to them and work with them. I guess the other thing to keep in mind is there's a ton of other assistance. The county I live in has, a couple $1 million in rent assistance available. You just got to get on Google and find out what's going on. If you have a mortgage, if it's federally backed, there's the law requires the mortgagor to work with you. So there's a lot of stuff going on. It's beyond the scope of this call, but get on Google and start Googling mortgage assistance, or how do I negotiate with my landlord, or just don't stick your head in the sand and not take responsibility for all the stuff going on.
Well,
So-
Jeff, you gave some great advice yesterday when we were talking that you told some people like, hey, look, instead of asking your landlord for 2 free months, just say, hey, can I get these next 2 months without paying you? And whatever I owe you, we'll just spread it out for the remainder of the lease. So,
Yeah, there's lots of things you can do. You can offer to renew as an inducement for them to do a deal with you if you want to stay. But yeah, don't just, the landlord may be struggling to make his mortgage payment on the property and be worried about a foreclosure. Not all landlords are rich.
He is.
What's that, Rich?
As you were saying, you got to understand the other guy's position too. The landlord probably is. Probably at least 50% of people that rent properties aren't getting their full rent over the next couple months.
Yeah. So that's all good stuff. So yeah, negotiate with your current creditors. They're all willing. Most of them are all willing to do something. I dealt directly with Amex. I'm paying the minimums, but I'm not getting any penalties or interest for the next month.
Because they're looking at it from the long term. They don't want to burn bridges. They want to be heroes. And you don't want to burn bridges either.
You're not likely to be evicted right now. Courts are closed. A lot of cities and counties have eviction moratoriums, but you still don't want your credit wrecked, and you don't want a bunch of late fees. So get with your landlord or your mortgagor and tell them the truth. Say, look, either we make a deal or I have to pay nothing and move in with my mom, or whatever your version of the truth is.
Yeah, and the credibility goes a long way. You don't want to have to play takeaway later on. Our mortgage loan was sold to Wells Fargo. And I said, oh shit, I hate those guys. However, we just clicked a button online and our mortgage payment was suspended for 3 months.
Nice.
So knowledge is power. Don't be a deer in the headlights. This is the time. The more you know, the better you can deal with this. And when you get to the other side, you're going to be a lot savvier on how to manage your money and on the ways of the world.
Very good. So yeah, this is how, keep going. Yeah.
Okay, so this is the tough one, putting your financial house in order. And most of you are not 25, $50 million companies with very sophisticated financial information. But here are the things that you're going to need to get together if you're going to do either one of the SBA loans other than the PPP. You're going to have to show cash flow projections. By the way, I just wrote an article on that on my post, Food for Thought, today. So if you want to be on my daily post, just send me an email at rich@coachtothebest.com. It's free. We'll put you on the post. You don't have to read them all anyway. You may want to show, you may be asked to show 3 years tax returns. If you have not filed 2020, it might be a good idea to do that. And it might be a good idea if you're having an accountant do it and they can't get to it, to just do a simple dumbing down that can be edited later on. Jeff, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so for the EIDL or the 7A, a lot of stuff is required, but you can get to the free grant money in the EIDL without a lot of this stuff. So if
So
you're
get started basically, and then get in the queue, and that puts you in the queue. And then when they come to your thing and say, oh, we need to have this, have these documents. And that way you won't lose your place in the queue, hopefully, right?
right, or you may elect to just take the grant and not continue with the rest of the EIDL loan, depending on what your situation is. But
Yeah.
you want to get in the EIDL and ask for the grant money at a minimum.
So I still want to give you a nice little gift on how you can ask for more money than you thought you could get.
Great.
If you're doing tax returns, and I hope I don't bore you with this, I'm going to show you a slide in a few moments on how to recast your tax return. So if your tax return is showing a loss, and if you're running a business like most of us do, which basically is a lifestyle business, there are ways to recast that tax return so you show yourself as really making money, but you're taking legitimate tax deductions. Personal financial statements, you're going to need that. You're going to probably need a personal balance sheet, which shows whether or not, what are your assets and what are your liabilities, and what are those liabilities that are short-term and long-term. You may need some help with that. Jeff, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, usually people just need to be pointed in the right direction and given some templates and they can do this. So when you run into something that looks intimidating, just get a little help, and often it's not quite as bad as it seems.
Yeah, so they can Google a lot of this information. Like is QuickBooks, I use QuickBooks. Is QuickBooks free enough, or is there an application, is there some kind of software that they can get that's free or cheap that they can just answer some questions to get this information?
There are many sites that have it. I couldn't tell you if they do. Mo's raising her hand.
Yeah, QuickBooks, you can export any reports. There's all kinds of, there's a report section, and you can export them into Excel spreadsheets, which I would recommend you do to get that information and to use it.
By the way, this is my baby, Maureen. And Maureen studied improv at Second City in Chicago, and she actually has taught improv, and we use that as part of our programs when we work with clients, and we do leadership retreats or forums.
But I worked a lot with bands and in music, so I had to explain to Rich what P&L means when you're a working performer.
What does that mean, Mo?
Well, for the business community, P&L means profit and loss. For the performing community, P&L means paid and laid tonight.
There you have it. Credit scores. You got to know your credit score. Your credit score can make or break you here. And in some cases, as they're moving things along, that's the first criteria they will look for to see if you qualify. I have written a couple posts that if you ask me, I will share on how to raise your credit score. If your score is above 650, you're in the lane. If it's below 650, you want to do everything you can to raise it. And on 80% of credit scores, there's misinformation. And getting rid of that misinformation can bring your score up as much as 100 points. Jeff, you want to add anything to that?
That's a whole category to itself, and that's something I help people with. I don't for free, and if people need help getting their score up, let me know. But you have to write a letter to make anything happen. And I know people forgot how and don't have stamps, and but there's some templates that you can find easily about how to dispute a charge. And if the person claiming you owe money doesn't do something, it automatically drops off. And a lot of times that happens, surprisingly.
Yeah, and everybody, just so y'all know, again, Jeff Thompson, he's a good buddy of mine, and he's like the #1 customer at Laughing Skull Lounge. Literally, he comes almost every week. And he also does these things called Adulting with Jeff, just helping people get stuff done. He does it for free. It's his way of giving back to humanity. And he loves comedy and comedians, so don't hesitate to reach out to him if you get stuck on any of this stuff. He loves to do this and help others.
Jeff, you are a treasure. So the personal guarantees, this may swing you from one loan to another. Because if you're taking the Fast Track Express 7A loan, which does, well, never mind, that doesn't require a personal guarantee. You need the personal guarantee for the EIDL loan.
Right, which is the $10,000 grant money one as well. And by the way, we got Felicia Gillespie asked a great question. That EIDL grant money, is that taxable?
No.
It's not taxable.
No, it's free money.
Man.
This PPP is, but here's the thing to keep in mind with PPP, and this is where the real hell is going to come on the other end. At some point, they're going to want you to show that you actually use the money to specifically for the purposes that you said you would. With the other two loans, once you get the money, you can almost do anything you want with it.
And for the PPP, you just have to show you paid yourself or the other person you were going to pay anyway that you used to qualify for the loan.
Yeah, just write yourself a check, write them a check. You can always just show canceled checks, and in the memo, put down there, you know.
And it's not just the dollars that you netted. It's any money you put in to Social Security, other taxes, state tax. It's not federal. It's local, any other taxes like that.
Gotcha. Great. There you go.
Okay. Did you have another thought, Marshall, on this?
No, not at all. Just looking forward to moving on.
Okay. So here's something I want you to look at in terms of being proactive with your finances. And I don't know what your monthly nut is to keep your business floating. But what I would like you to do is look at all of your payments and look for things like paying for subscriptions you don't use. Look for things like cell phones you're no longer using. Look for things that are fat that you don't need right now and cut out the fat. Jeff, what would you add in terms of some of the things that you should look for on your P&L?
Ask for a deferment from everyone, obviously, your car payment, whoever you can ask, just go ahead and ask. You want to, if you got to use a credit card, use the one with the lowest interest rate. I don't know. Everybody's situation's a little different.
Well, and also at the limit, what you're talking there about cell phones and all these softwares and stuff, you know, Rich works with a lot of big businesses and people that have a lot of things moving, and you'd be surprised how often you find things like, what the hell are we paying for? And not only just for companies, but also people. Like what I do to do this is I go through my American Express charges and see what's going on, go through my bank statement, see if there's anything weird there. And you'll be surprised. A lot of people will find something, you know, it could be something you signed an annual renewal for and it came up and you didn't even know it went on your bill.
Or you got something free. And the fine print is for 3 months, but you need to give us your credit card. And then they've been dinging you for the last 5 years.
Yep.
So this is the time to do your homework and eliminate all those charges that are erroneous or any fat in your spending. And as Marshall said, we're talking personal and we're talking business, because your business is lifestyle anyway, for the most part. The next phase is cut to the bare necessities. That means what can you let go that you absolutely don't need? And what I recommend you do this is if you were doing a prenuptial marriage, and where you said at a certain point, if this is where my cash flow is, I got to make the second round of cuts. And then the third is just bare bones. What is it you have to keep paying, and the rest just let go and make the difficult choices. Anyone, you want to add anything to that?
No, I think that looks good.
All right. Okay. Now, for your SBA loan and for your 7A loan, you have to be able to craft a story, particularly with your industry, so they understand what your niche is, how you make your money, how you are growing in your field. Are you selling other things other than yourself on that stage that night? Do you sell
Merch.
CDs at the end of the program? All these things. And the reason the story is important, and I learned this from Lenny Bruce, and Lenny tells the story of, he was performing in a nightclub in the late 50s or early 60s in New Jersey, in Cherry Hill. And he was there for a week. And on Saturday night, when the place was full, they busted him and sent everybody home, and they busted him for obscenity. And there was a cop in the audience taking notes the whole week. So Lenny gets to court and he says, "Judge, let me do my act so you can see it in its context." And the judge said, "Out of order." And then he brings up the policeman. And the policeman said, "Well, what did Lenny Bruce do?" And he said, "The Pope is a homosexual, lesbians, this and that. This person's got the clap." All sorts of things. If you've ever heard a Lenny Bruce tape, you know what he would say. And the judge says, "That's obscene." Lenny Bruce says, "I got arrested on the Cops Act. I got convicted on the Cops Act. You don't want to get convicted on the banker making the decision that ultimately an underwriter will write." That's why it's so important for you to tell your story.
And so what you're saying is basically make sure that, you know, you have your story written out as to what your story is and give that to them and be ready to give that to them in the application. Don't
Yes,
just,
now, on the initial application, you may not be able to do it. But on the follow through, you want to make sure they receive all of that.
so that's part of getting ready for the next phase of your applications is make sure you have your story in place.
Okay, so this is where I believe I can show you how you can make more money than you think you can from one of these two programs. My friend Kat Edmondson, who we mentor, is a singer-songwriter. She was on a tour. The tour was canceled in the last 2 weeks. At every stop on the tour, she sold CDs. Actually, she sold a double album for $60 and generally made about $1,200 a night in additional revenue from what she sold there. She also, in every city, she was interviewed by radio stations, and she was able to find that every time she was in a city, online sales went up. And she was on a very high run rate, and then suddenly it's all cut off. So what would her ask be? Well, the first thing is you want to tell your story. What was your history going into the virus? Specifically, what was your history in the trailing 12 months? For example, in the trailing 12 months, Kat invested an enormous amount of money on her CD. Musicians, producers, space in the studios, all the things you have to do to create a music CD, videos, all sorts of things. Impact of the virus, virtually everything is shut down. What are the actions you're taking? This shows you're not a deer in the headlines.
Hey, Rich, can I
Yeah.
go back to the impact where you're talking about the projected revenue from merch sales? How does that, I mean, are you saying that in some of these applications, you're able to say, hey, these are my trailing 12 months, but because I can't do this tour, I'm now going to lose X amount of merch revenue.
You bet.
You can add that to these.
So I'm going to skip to this slide because I thought this was the one I was going to, and we can go back. So what's your lost business? If you have a tour set up and dates were canceled, that's lost business.
So for these comedians that had dates for the next 2 months that all got canceled, all of that, add all that up, document as much as you can, just have some kind of sheet showing what that is. And you can say, hey, because of COVID, I lost 2 months worth of business, which is, you know, whatever X amount of dollars. So
Now,
that's
I'll give you another one. Let's say you lost 4 to 6 months worth of business. And let's say you were going to do a performance in Seattle on March the 25th. And it wasn't canceled, it was postponed. And now you're going to do it in October. Well, while you're doing that in October, you can't be somewhere else. So that's part of the double whammy here. And it's your job to tell the story so they understand it and they see the lost business and lost opportunities as a result of this.
and so the lost business, lost opportunities, is that for all 3 programs or is it just for the 7A?
The 7A or particularly the EIDL, it is not for PPP.
So in the EIDL application, because I think a lot of people are going to go PPP and EIDL. So on the EIDL, this is where you document your lost business and lost opportunities.
Yeah, you take the 10,000 and then make the case. So let's play with this. Let's say you're on tour and you get $1,000 a night. and you had 30 dates canceled. That's $30,000.
Honey,
Yeah.
they're comedians. $100 a night?
No, I think they're getting more than that.
Okay.
Okay.
Whatever the number is, but keep going.
Okay. So I'm just playing with numbers. And also, do you sell anything at those dates? A lot of my musician friends tell me they make their money on what they sell after the concert when they autograph stuff.
Gotcha.
If you do that, that's income you have lost per date. And then what are your ongoing expenses that you've had to pay? And what is lost productivity? Now, I'd like you guys to think about how this works for you. But I have a client that has people that get paid $200 an hour for what they do. Normally, they bill as up to 40 hours a week. Now, they're home with their kids and they're losing productivity. So instead of 32 hours, instead of 40 hours a week of billing, it's only 32. So they're losing $1,600 a day per employee on top line money. I'm not sure where lost productivity would fit in, but maybe you guys can figure it out.
Gotcha.
And your run rate of growth. If you're growing at X% per year in revenue or number of dates, and you just hit this brick wall, you figure that in. So what I'd like Jeff to look at this and both of you guys and say, okay, comedians, here's what you should be thinking of in terms of how you build this case.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Any argument that passes the sniff or reasonable test is going to be accepted here. They want to push this money out to people. And so you just really have to compare your life before to your life now and subtract it and consider everything and make a case. I mean.
Yeah, so that's going to be part of your story that you're putting together is a lost business and lost opportunities to be able to apply for it. And that's for the EIDL as well. So
yeah, you could say I can't book shows because the bookers aren't available. You know,
by the way, that's right. That's lost opportunity. That's what I'm hearing. We can't even book. I've got a client who is in the resale ticket business, and they don't even know if there's going to be a football season.
right.
And if there's not a football season, they make their money on college football more than anything else. So there's all kinds of factors. Orders are not coming in. You are not getting booked. Normally, you have 10 bookings a month. No bookings are coming in. Jeff, that's a great point.
But you have to really compare what you can't do now to what you could do before, and just make a list and really brainstorm it. And anything you can make even a halfway reasonable argument, you make it.
Yeah, that sounds good. We got to kind of wrap this up. So I guess, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm assessing that what we're hearing here is like, look, guys, go do the EIDL, SBA disaster loan. That's what that stands for. Get that grant money. Go start your PPP or a 7A, whichever one you want to do. I recommend the PPP in this world. Would you agree with that, Jeff?
Yeah, it's a slam dunk to start the EIDL and ask for the grant. You don't have to even complete the EIDL to get the grant. And the PPP is also a slam dunk. Both of those things are free money, and not to apply is just to give away free money at this point.
And then what Rich is saying here with the lost business and lost opportunity and all those expenses is make sure you have that as part of your story for the ask. Because again, if it's free money, you want to ask for as much as possible that you can document legitimately. You can't say that you lost $30,000 in bookings over the next 2 months when in the last quarter you only made $400. So you got to be able to show something, and they're more likely going to look at your bank deposits. You know,
Not for the, just to be clear though, not for the grant. You don't have to do all this to get the grant.
correct. The grant, the 10 grand is a no-brainer. That you should have already done that by now. You could have gotten off this webinar and gone and done it, but you didn't. You're still here. So, so yeah, that's about the process. The wrapping it up, I think, would be.
So Jeff, what I want to say is if you do this process here, the 10 grand may be just a small portion of what you can ultimately get. Because if you're working, if you're viable, you have lost business, lost opportunities, incurred expenses, and if you're on a run rate of growth and your ticket sales were going up, all those things count.
No, I'm 100% behind that. What I'm saying is you can apply for the 10 grand immediately without having all that other stuff in order.
Yeah.
That you can do later. That's the key that I'm saying.
Yeah, and the beautiful point about what you just said is you have the time to get your house in order. The most important thing is to get in the queue.
Yep. So we got some questions here. I got a good question from James. He's asking about unemployment if he didn't get PPP eligible.
I
If
think
you got-
you can do
If
both.
you got unemployment, can he still get PPP? Is that what he's asking?
Yeah. How does the unemployment, the federal unemployment, state unemployment, how does that apply to these loans? Are they completely separate and it doesn't matter?
I don't think it matters for unemployment.
So you can still collect unemployment and do the EIDL.
I haven't seen anything that prohibits it. Somebody could come back later. You mean the PPP? Somebody could come back later and prohibit it, but I've seen nothing to prohibit it for now. So I would just apply for it. Apply for both.
And you can also say, hey, I needed money today. I didn't know how long it would take to get the PPP program. The thing that is very important, that the money you get from the PP program, whatever that box is of how that money's supposed to go, when you go for other programs, you cannot ask for that. You've already got it.
Gotcha. And then, so if you're a W-2 and 1099, you can go for the EIDL and the PPP with that 1099 loss income. But if you're still getting a W-2, I don't think you can also get unemployment. Isn't that correct? Because you got a W-2 income.
You can if your pay went down as a result of COVID-19. You can get unemployment between what you were getting and what you're getting now.
Oh, wow. Okay. So if you're a W-2 of 30,000, a 1099 of 20, that's a 50,000. So you would do the unemployment at 20,000 divided by.
You apply for unemployment with your state agency and they'll help you figure it out. And keep in mind, even if you were ineligible for state unemployment, you're probably going to be eligible for the federal unemployment, which is $600 a week.
And
for
you do that
13
through the
weeks.
state. You apply for that through the state as well, correct?
Yeah, and the state may have already told you you're not eligible for unemployment. You didn't work enough or whatever. But that doesn't mean you're ineligible for the federal unemployment, which is $600. And that's administered through the same office. In Georgia, it's the Department of Labor. And in Georgia, they're not going to be ready till April 10th, by the way, they said.
Gotcha. So all these people out there that lost 1099 income, go file for unemployment through the state as well as the other programs.
The other thing I want to just throw in, as a comedian, if you are a comedy writer for someone else, for other people, that's income that may have dried up right now as well.
Yeah, that's true. There's a lot of people that do that. So, well, great. Let's open up to questions real quick. We're a little bit over, but I mean, obviously this is valuable. Anybody can bounce when they want. Any questions from the comedians?
You want to unmute everybody, Marshall, or how you want to do this?
Well, I'm just doing it through the chat. Everybody, there's a chat box if y'all haven't seen it. So if you can, I've seen other people doing the chat box. Here, let me just.
Some people may not see how to get into the chat. It's a little obscure. It's down at the bottom.
Go to the bottom, at the very bottom, see chat, the little thing there. Go ahead and open that up and you can ask any questions. Great. Ben says, what if I claim unemployment until June and then disperse PPP in mid-June? Would I get unemployment March, April, and May?
Nobody knows right now.
Beg for forgiveness.
Just
Yeah, that's
proceed.
something I've picked up as well. It's like, you know, man, go out there and grab as much as you can. You're desperate. You're trying to get it done. You don't know what's going on. It's very confusing. At the end of it, if they can't overwhelmingly show that you're trying to scam them, you're going to be okay.
Also, remember the PPP is retroactive till the end of January. So they're compensating you back to January 31st. So, and it's 2.5 months worth. So it doesn't matter when you apply, you're going to get the amount back to January 31st.
Gotcha. So Felicia asked, how do we show we paid ourselves with the PPP loan so that it is forgiven? Claim it as income on next year's taxes? Yes, but also just write yourself a check and then you have that.
So
That's a great question. I
the-
heard yesterday on the website, any of this money you're getting, open up a different account to show money going in and money going out.
Oh, there you go. So go from savings to checking or checking 1 to checking 2.
Right.
So one of the reasons that held up this process is the banks were freaking out because they were afraid the federal government was going to leave the bank on the hook if everything wasn't wrapped up right and it wasn't forgiven correctly. And the federal government has assured the banks, we're not trying to screw people here. We're not trying to make it difficult. We want this money out. And if you have, if you're legitimately paid yourself before and can't pay yourself now, you're probably going to be okay.
Yeah. And then another question is if you're an independent contractor and you get the PPP loan and all of that goes to your payroll expense, is that forgivable? Going towards your payroll and rent and utilities? And the answer is yes.
Only 25% can be non-payroll.
Oh, only 25% can be non-payroll.
Up to 25%, that's correct.
Up to not, but 100% of it, if it was 100% going towards payroll, then it's all forgiven.
Correct.
Gotcha.
So do your homework. And again, if you go to the Divvy site, it's just so, they did such a beautiful job of answering all those questions.
Okay, that sounds good. So any other questions real quick before we wrap it up? And by the way, we are going to send this out. I'm putting my email address in here where you can ask for a recording. It's marshall@laughingskulllounge.com. Divvy's asking for a 419. What if you don't have one? What's a 419? It's almost 420.
What's a 419?
I don't know.
I've got it, just a second. It's what, it's a standard form.
It's a payroll form. So then I guess in that situation, you would just print out a blank 419, fill it out, and then load it back in as a document.
Personal,
Are you in Pennsylvania? 419 is not a familiar term to me.
United States of America Small Business Administration, statement of personal history. So it's a personal financial statement.
Yeah, that sounds right.
So it's a personal financial statement. So I guess just go find a blank one online and complete it, really, right?
Yep.
It's just how much is your car worth? How much money do you have in the bank? It's
No,
pretty
actually,
straightforward.
This is basically the 419 is a form. I'm looking at the wrong form. There's one to say you've never been a felon.
Yes.
Well, there they go. All right, cool. Any other questions, guys? Not a question, just thanks. Oh yeah, my pleasure, Bill. I'm glad. Just double checking that we could do PPP and EDL and self-unemployment benefits. So yes, like Rich was saying, go for it all. You know, do the unemployment, do the PPP, do the EIDL, and just get what you can at this point. And at the end of it all, just make sure you're not scamming, you know, and doing everything like, hey, if you can honestly say, this is how much I've made, this is how much I'm losing because of that, and these are my expenses and blah, blah. If you can validate that through bank statements, through whatever, you should be okay. Let's see here. Another question. If your comedy work was in one state, but you live in another, which state should you claim? The state that you live in, because that's the state. Well, that's a great question. You can't really file for state unemployment in more than one state, right? It'd be your state, your residence of state, and that's the one you're mostly paying taxes on.
You can, but they'll catch you doing that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's the state you work on. The state
Don't
you
be
work in.
stupid. Don't be greedy. Don't be stupid. And everything you say about your losses, you want to document, as Marshall said, and you want to be able to show the assumptions behind everything.
Yeah, and no dick pics. As tempting as it is. So,
So
well, that sounds
basically,
great. Well, you guys got everybody's Jeff. If you look through the chat, you know, Jeff has given his email address, Jeff at jeffthompson.com, Jeff, like a normal person spells Jeff. Mine's Marshall with 2 L's at Laughing Skull Lounge. You know, just let me know if there's any question. Let Jeff know the questions, and we're going to send this recording out to everybody. That if you want it, email me. But if you got this list, we're going to put it out to everything we did it. So I appreciate everybody being on here. If you have any questions, email us. But get going, man. Go do your EIDL next, so you can get that $10,000 money coming in. Do the PPP. Get the forms that need to be done on that. You got Cabbage. You got Divvy. And if you have a great relationship with your bank, do that one too. I know, as I've heard from several businesses, they're filling out applications at multiple institutions and going with the first one that comes at them. So don't be afraid to do the same application a few different places if you have to. Like, do it at Cabbage, do it at Divvy, and then don't take the second loan. Take the first one that comes at you and get out of the program at that point if that's what you want to do.
You
The
guys
other
should have
thing I would-
time to work on this stuff.
the other thing I would say to answer that question, time to work on this stuff, look at it as this is going to be your next comedy act. And
Fewer jokes.
what's that?
With fewer jokes.
Well, I think there's a lot of humor in going through all this that you can work into an act. I would like to say I have 2 phone numbers. If it's still on the screen, do not use the office. Please feel free to get in touch with us at rich@coach2thebest, and we will send you information as we have it that will be invaluable to you.
Yeah, he's like Rich said earlier, if you missed it, he is coming up with a website, easy. You can go there and fill out the forms on his website for everybody. He's putting together something to make it a little bit easier for everybody.
Yep.
All right, guys, thank you so much. I appreciate y'all being here. Go write some jokes. Be nice to everybody. Jeff, you have anything you want to say? Rich, you got anything you want to wrap it up?
Go for the money. The name of this program is Getting the Last Laugh on SBA.
If you don't do it, it will hurt my heart a little bit not to take free money. So get some help and do it if you need
There you
it.
go, guys. All right, man. Thanks for being a part of this. Rich, thank you so much for your time. Jeff, thank you so much for your time. And I'm glad we were able to do this. I hope it helps everybody. I think this answered a lot of my questions. So I think it probably answered all these people's questions. And thanks again, guys. And we'll see you on the interwebs. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Hey, Rich.
Yes.